This video introduced the concept of synonym in IPM. Expressions in IPM are used in many, if not all, engineering objects. They share the same syntax and make use of the same expression editor. But an expression can become relatively long and sometimes very hard to read. This is because you might have variable names that are cryptic or expressions that you want to use that make use of JavaScript code that can be very long. And in order to simplify that, synonyms can be used to either replace a variable name or even replace a complete expression. And IPM provides two ways to create synonyms. One is by using a synonym book object that you can find on the palette. And I will go there and create one. So I can go to the palette. At the bottom here you'll find synonym book object, and I'll drag one here, then go back into presentation mode. This synonym book will allow you to create synonyms for variables or synonyms for expressions, but its visibility is limited to this schematic. With other words, all the IPM engineering objects upon this page can make use of the synonyms defined in this book here, but this book is really local. Only these objects on this page can see these synonyms. An IPM object located on a different schematic will not be able to use the contents of this book. For doing that, there is a way. You can create, or you don't have to create actually, it's already created inside your application controller. If you go on configure, there's an entry here for global synonyms. So if I would click this, I would have exactly the same menu, the same configuration menu for creating either variable or expression synonyms, but then in this case these are global synonyms. So whatever I define here will be visible on for any IPM objects using this application controller. I'm not going to do that right here. I'm going to use the local synonym book in this example like we described here. So I'll show you first how to create a synonym for a variable. So that's the first page. No, I'm sorry, that's the next page here. So on the first page you have expression, on the second page you have variable. So let's first create a synonym for an existing variable. So what you need to do here is to create one, because right now the list is empty. We just created this synonym book. It creates a new entry and calls it V. We can edit this variable synonym and say, okay, we'll use, for instance, S1. My example here will be the name of my synonym, and this will replace the variable name that would be, in my example, very hard to read or memorize, but in this case just called x1. And I can close this, and now if I would have an IPM object on this schematic here using an expression, I could use the syntax s1. It would be exactly the same one as x1. The only difference is that instead of using x1 like this, you have to put synonyms between square brackets. So if we want to use this, we can try to just copy this book and navigate to page 2 where we have defined these IPM objects here, and let's put the synonym, a new copy of that synonym book here. And now you can see that this thing has one line here, meaning that there's one entry in the synonym book. That's the S1 that we just created. So now I could go into this definition of this material balance object, and instead of using x1 here, I could go into my editor, and I will find here in my local synonyms section, this editor knows now that there is a local synonym book upon this schematic where one synonym is defined with the name S1, and S1 is a replacement for X1, not currently used, but I'm going to change that. So I'm going to replace this X1 here with this entry here. And when I finish this is going to be exactly the same internally. It's exactly the same code that is running behind the scene that we don't see here, but this synonym now is replacing the name of that variable X1. So now let's go back to page 4, where we had this definition of synonyms, and I'll show you an example of a expression synonym. So that is something that you can find on the first page of a synonym book, or when you edit the global synonyms, and it behaves exactly the same way. Initially the list is empty, so you create a new entry in the list. It gives it default name E, but again you can edit this and call it like you want. For instance, in my example here, we want to create a random number that is a percentage, so I can just type some JavaScript code here for generating a random value and multiply this the random value by 100, so that we have a number here between 0 and 99 in this case. So now, instead of writing this complex formula in an expression, I can just use a %% between square brackets, and that will do. That text will be replaced when the code is compiled by the JavaScript code that you see here.